On the hospital roof, with rain pouring down and his right hand slipping on wet concrete, Leo Vane looked up at his brother Gabe and whispered an apology, 10 years in the making. Below them, the city stretched out in a gray blur. Above them, a man in a white linen suit prepared to erase them both. But that morning had begun like any other, with a blank page and a pen that wouldn't move. Leo sat at his scratched mahogany desk, the kind that had survived 3 apartments and 2 evictions. The yellow legal pad lay before him, pristine except for a faint coffee stain in the corner. His right hand held a ballpoint pen from Citibank, the kind they give out for free, the kind that never writes smoothly. The pen tip hovered above the paper like an insect that couldn't decide where to land. The rain tapped against the window of apartment 402. The wall clock above the bookshelf ticked with a rhythm that matched his heartbeat, a steady, anxious pulse that had been his companion for 3 months now. Next to the pen lay a half-empty glass of amber whiskey, untouched since yesterday, and his iPhone 11 with a cracked screen that made it look as if the world outside was fractured into pieces. He had tried this before, 20 times, 30 times. Each time the pen touched paper, his hand would cramp, and the words would scatter like startled birds. "Dear Gabe," he wrote this time. The letters came out shaky, slanted too far to the right, as if written by someone with a tremor in their blood. He stared at those 2 words for what felt like minutes. They contained nothing and everything at once. An apology compressed into a greeting. A decade of silence attempting to find breath. Leo dragged the pen across the paper in a jagged line, scratching out the words with increasing pressure. The ballpoint tore through the yellow sheet, leaving a ragged wound in the legal pad. He threw the pen down. It rolled off the desk and fell to the floor beneath the radiator. The phone was there, glowing on the desk beside the destroyed paper. His iPhone 11, the screen cracked like a spider web, but the light still working. He picked it up with trembling fingers and navigated to his contacts. He found Gabe's name and stared at it for a long moment. Next to the name, it said, "Do not call." Those words had been there for 3 months, ever since Leo had blocked the number himself. Or so he thought. He opened the message field, and his thumbs moved across the screen with the weight of bricks. "Mom is getting worse. We need to talk about the house." The words appeared in a blue bubble on the screen, waiting. His thumb hovered over the send arrow, that blue, upward-pointing triangle that would launch the message across the city to his brother, wherever Gabe was, whoever he had become. 3 heavy knocks struck the wooden door. The sound was so sudden and so violent that Leo's hand spasmed. The phone flew from his fingers and hit the desk hard, the screen bouncing but not breaking. His body went rigid. The muscles in his neck tightened, as if someone had wound a rope around his throat. 3 more knocks. Aggressive. Authoritative. The kind of knocks that meant nothing good. Leo stood slowly, pushing his chair back. The wood scraped against the hardwood floor with a sound like fingernails dragging across bone. He moved toward the door on the balls of his feet, trying to make no sound at all. His apartment was small enough that 5 silent steps brought him to the door. The worn oriental rug beneath his feet absorbed his weight like a confessor absorbs sins. He leaned forward and pressed his eye against the brass peephole. The image came back distorted and bulbous, the way peepholes always render the world. A man stood in the hallway outside his apartment. Gray tracksuit, black boots that looked expensive in a brutal sort of way. A clipboard held against his chest. His face was broad and unremarkable, the face of someone whose job was to make other people uncomfortable. But what caught Leo's attention was the smile. a grin that revealed a chipped front tooth and an expression that suggested the man had already decided how this conversation would end. The man looked directly at the peephole. At Leo. The knock came again, this time accompanied by a boot striking the bottom of the door. The metal hinges rattled. Leo's hands moved automatically. He unlatched the chain lock, the small brass slide that wouldn't stop anyone but made him feel marginally safer, and cracked the door open 3 inches. The safety chain created a metallic rattle. "Leo Vane," the man said. Not a question. A statement of fact delivered with the confidence of someone reading from a list. "You're behind on the Sibling Fund repayments." The voice was low and gravelly, like a rock tumbler filled with gravel and regret. The man smiled wider, and the chipped tooth seemed to wink at Leo like an obscene joke. Leo's hand shot forward. He pressed the door frame hard, trying to slam it shut against the chain. The door moved maybe an inch before it stopped hard against something solid. The man's hand. It was thick and scarred, with fingers that looked like they'd been broken and reset multiple times. The tendons stood out on the back like highway maps. This man used his hands for a living, and nothing good came from that. "I told Silas I'd have it by Friday," Leo said, and the desperation in his voice was immediate and unmistakable. It cracked on the word Friday, like his voice was breaking all over again. "Leo," the man said, and now he was leaning his shoulder against the door. "We can do this easy or we can do this hard." Leo put all his weight against the door. Wait, his heels began to slide on the hardwood floor. The door was winning. Then the man threw his full body weight against it. The chain snapped with a metallic twang. The door flew inward and Leo stumbled backward, his arms windmilling. His back struck the side table, the one that held the ceramic lamp, a pale blue thing his mother had bought him as a housewarming gift when he'd first moved into this apartment. The lamp teetered. Leo grabbed for it, missed, and it fell. It hit the floor and exploded into 1,000 shards of pale ceramic. White dust rose up like a ghost. The man was on him before he could move. Fingers wrapped around Leo's shirt collar, yanking him upright. The man's other hand pressed flat against Leo's sternum, and Leo could feel the calluses, the strength coiled in those muscles. "Listen," the man said, his breath smelling of coffee and something rotten underneath. "You're going to listen to me now." Leo swung his arm up in a blind punch. He felt his fist connect with something. The man's shoulder, maybe, or his upper arm. It was like punching concrete. The pain shot through his knuckles and up into his wrist. The man laughed, a low, harsh sound that didn't contain any humor. Then the man drove his knee up with clinical precision. Leo saw it coming but couldn't stop it. His hands were occupied, his body was off balance, and there was nowhere to go. The knee drove into his stomach with an impact that forced all the air from his lungs. Leo doubled over, his hands clutching at nothing, and his knees gave way. He dropped to the floor, gasping like a fish on a dock. "Silas says the interest is a family matter now," the man said, standing over him. "He knows about Gabe." The words hit Leo almost as hard as the knee. "Get out," Leo wheezed. The man, Mick, Leo would later learn, though he never learned much else about him, kicked the yellow legal pad off the desk. It sailed across the room and ended up under the kitchen counter. Mick turned and walked toward the door. His boots were heavy on the hardwood floor, the sound deliberately loud, a statement of intent. He paused at the threshold. "Friday," he said. "You get the money by Friday or Silas gets the house. That's how this works now." Then he was gone. The door slammed behind him, hard enough that the remaining picture frames on the shelves rattled. Leo remained on the floor for a long time, his hand pressed against his midsection, his breathing coming in short, painful gasps. Dust from the broken lamp continued to drift slowly through the air, catching the light from his desk lamp like tiny stars falling to earth. Eventually, he crawled. His hands and knees moved across the hardwood floor, following some animal instinct that had him moving toward the desk, toward the phone, toward the one thin thread that connected him to his brother, to his past, to something that might feel like redemption or might just feel like pain. He grabbed the iPhone from where it had landed. The screen was still glowing. His unsent message waited in the blue bubble. "Mom is getting worse. We need to talk about the house." He opened his email instead. The email app showed his inbox. Mostly bills and spam, the digital detritus of a life that was coming apart at the seams. But when he scrolled down to the junk folder, there it was. A message from an address he didn't recognize. gvain1992.gmail.com. The timestamp said it had arrived 3 months ago. His hands shaking, Leo opened it. "Leo, I've been calling. Your number is blocked. I've sent the money for Mom's treatment through the lawyer. Why haven't you responded?" The words seemed to rearrange themselves as he read them. His number was blocked. He hadn't blocked Gabe. He had called Gabe dozens of times 3 months ago, after the lawyer had first contacted him about their mother. Each time, the call had gone straight to voicemail. Each time, Leo had assumed his brother didn't care anymore. But his number was blocked. Someone had blocked it. Leo's fingers moved automatically to his settings. He navigated to blocked contacts and saw it there, exactly as the email suggested. Gabe's number, blocked for who knows how long, and below it, another number blocked. Mom's lawyer. Leo had not done this. That knowledge settled into his chest like a stone. Someone had been in his phone. Someone had decided that the brothers would not speak. Someone had decided that Leo's attempts to reconnect with his brother would be silenced before they even had a chance to fail. The side table was still standing, despite the lamp's fall. On it, the framed photograph of Leo and Gabe sat at a slight angle. They were maybe 8 and 12 in the photo, Leo remembered, standing in front of their old house with their father. Their father was smiling, a genuine smile that reached his eyes, and his hands rested on both their shoulders. They were before everything broke, before their father died, before Leo and Gabe stopped speaking. The glass of the frame was cracked from when Mick had knocked the table. But behind the photo, visible now in a way it hadn't been before, was something small and black. Leo reached for the frame with trembling fingers and turned it over. There was a device taped to the back. Small, rectangular, black plastic with a tiny red LED light on the front. And beneath the device, attached with silver duct tape, was a label that read, "Property of Thorne Investments." Even as Leo watched, the red light blinked once. A pulse, a heartbeat, a voice speaking through fiber optic cable, through the walls of his apartment, through the very fabric of his isolation. Someone was listening. Someone was always listening. Leo didn't sleep that night. He sat at his desk with the listening device in front of him, staring at the red LED as it blinked on and off, on and off. He thought about destroying it. But the knowledge that someone was monitoring his movements was almost a comfort. At least he wasn't invisible. At least someone cared enough to listen. By morning, Leo had made a decision. He would go to the hospital. He would find his mother. And somehow, he would find a way to warn his brother that they were both being watched. The drive there was long. His 2005 blue Honda Civic had seen better days. The paint was faded on one side, and the air conditioning was broken. So he drove with the windows down, despite the chill in the air. The fog rolled in thick across the city, turning the streets into something gray and dreamlike. St. Jude Hospital rose up out of the mist like a concrete monument to suffering. Leo drove slowly through the parking garage, his hands tight on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, exactly as his father had taught him a lifetime ago. Somewhere in this building, his mother was lying in a bed. Somewhere in this city, his brother was walking through his own version of the same trap. Leo parked on the 3rd level and shut off the engine. Through the windshield, he could see the hospital's main glass revolving doors. They opened and closed in a steady rhythm, people flowing in and out like blood through an artery. He waited, watching, trying to think of what he would say when he saw his mother. How would he begin to explain? A tall man in a navy wool coat emerged from the building. Leo recognized him immediately, even though it had been more than 10 years. Gabe had aged. His face was fuller now, weathered by something Leo didn't understand. He wore a beard that made him look like a stranger wearing Gabe's face. But his walk was the same. That particular way of moving that came from their father. A slight lean to the right that suggested an old injury. Gabe was carrying a small brown paper bag. His free hand was checking his watch. He was in a hurry, moving with purpose. This was it. This was Leo's chance. He pushed open the car door and was just stepping out when a black SUV screamed around the corner of the parking garage. The tires shrieked on the concrete. The SUV skidded to a stop perpendicular to Leo's car, blocking him in. The driver's side door flew open. A man in a leather jacket stepped out. He had the same physical presence as Mick, but something about him was different. There was intelligence behind his eyes, a calculation. This man wasn't just muscle. This man was a thinker. Silas says no family reunions today, the man said. And then he was moving toward Leo with the speed of someone who had practiced this motion 100 times. Leo tried to back up, but the car door was behind him. He raised his hands instinctively, and the man grabbed his arm and spun him around, pressing him hard against the blue Honda. The impact forced the air from Leo's lungs. Pain shot through his ribs. Leo threw his head backward hard, using his skull as a weapon. He felt it connect with the man's face. There was a crunch of cartilage, the man's nose breaking, and a spray of blood that hit the window and splattered across the faded paint. The man howled and loosened his grip. Leo dropped low, his legs driving, and scrambled toward his brother. Behind him, he could hear the sound of leather boots on concrete, getting closer. "Gabe, run!" Leo screamed. Gabe turned. His eyes went wide as he took in the scene, the blood on the car, the man in the leather jacket pressing his broken nose with one hand while reaching into his belt with the other. For a moment, Gabe stood frozen. Then he dropped the brown paper bag. Orange pill bottles spilled across the concrete, rolling in different directions. Gabe ran toward Leo. It wasn't graceful, it wasn't fast, but it was a choice. After all these years, it was a choice to move toward rather than away. The man in the leather jacket pulled a telescopic baton from his belt and snapped it open. The metal made a sound like a gunshot, echoing through the parking garage. The baton was sleek and wicked-looking, the kind of thing that was designed to hurt. "This way," Leo shouted, and he grabbed Gabe's arm and pulled him toward the hospital. Behind them, the sound of footsteps echoing through concrete and shadow. They made it to a heavy steel door marked "Maintenance," just as the baton connected with the frame, striking sparks. Leo threw his shoulder against the door, and it swung open. On the other side was a stairwell and the smell of industrial cleaner. Leo slammed the door behind them and slid a heavy yellow mop bucket against it to buy them time. Both brothers were heaving, their chests rising and falling, as they tried to process the violence that had erupted from nothing. "Who the hell are those people, Leo?" Gabe demanded. and his voice was shaking with anger and fear. Leo looked at his brother's hands. Even in the dim light of the stairwell, he could see that Gabe was wearing an expensive gold watch. A Rolex. Leo had never seen Gabe wear anything like that. He looked down at his own hands. Bruised knuckles, dirty fingernails, the hands of someone who had been working as a dishwasher to make rent. "You tell me," Leo said, and the bitterness was a taste in his mouth. "You're the one who sent the lawyer with Silas's money." Gabe's expression shifted. Confusion gave way to anger, gave way to something else. Understanding, maybe, or betrayal. "I didn't send money," Gabe said coldly. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a crumpled envelope. He handed it to Leo without speaking. Leo opened it. Inside was a legal notice. Vane and Associates. The letterhead was official-looking, complete with a seal. The document was addressed to Gabe and stated that he was being served notice regarding a lawsuit concerning the disposition of their mother's property. The defendant was listed as Leo Vane, and the third party, mentioned multiple times in the legal jargon, was someone called Silas Thorne. "I didn't send money," Gabe repeated. "I sent a lawsuit to stop you from selling Mom's house." Leo read the words again, trying to fit them into a shape that made sense. But they wouldn't fit. They kept sliding past each other like puzzle pieces that belonged to different pictures. "I never tried to sell the house," Leo said. His voice sounded hollow. "I was taking loans to keep it. For Mom's treatment." There was a moment of silence between them, heavy with realization. "Someone's been lying to both of us," Gabe said. Above them, in the stairwell, they could hear sounds. Footsteps, men moving with purpose. "We need to move," Leo said. They ran up the stairs, taking them two at a time. The sound of their footsteps echoed back at them, doubling and tripling until it sounded like an army was chasing them. Behind them, the door burst open, and the man with the broken nose appeared, still pressing one hand against his face. Leo kept climbing. Up and up, the gray concrete walls blurring past. 12 flights, 15, 20. Finally, they emerged onto a roof. The sky above was gray and heavy with clouds. The rain hadn't started yet, but it was coming. Leo could smell it in the air. The roof was flat and empty except for HVAC units and a collection of antennas. The city spread out below them in all directions, a maze of buildings and streets and lives that had nothing to do with what was happening up here. And standing in the center of the roof, like he had been waiting for them all along, was a man in a white linen suit. He was leaning on a silver-headed cane, his posture impeccable despite what looked like a careful disregard for gravity. He was smiling. Around him, two men stood with their hands resting casually on their hips, near the bulges of handguns. "Reunions are so expensive, boys," the man said. His voice was smooth and pleasant, the voice of someone greeting old friends. "And someone has to pay." Leo didn't remember deciding to fight. His body just moved. He launched himself at the nearest thug, driving low and hard, trying to tackle the man's midsection. For a moment, it worked. The thug went backward, stumbling. But then his training kicked in, and he used Leo's own momentum against him, flipping Leo over his hip. Leo crashed onto the gravel roof surface, hard enough that all the air left his lungs again. The thug brought the gun down in a hammer strike. Leo rolled to the side, and the butt of the gun slammed into the gravel next to his head. He felt the impact vibrate through his ribs. Next to him, Gabe was trying to fight the second thug. Gabe threw a wild, unpracticed punch that the thug easily parried. "Whatever you want, let him go." The man in the white suit laughed. It was a pleasant sound, the laugh of someone who found genuine joy in his work. "What I want," he said, is for you both to understand something. He pulled a tablet from inside his jacket. He tapped the screen and a video began to play. It was their mother. She was sitting in a hospital bed, but not like someone who was dying. She looked healthy, vital. She was sipping tea and smiling at the camera. If you're watching this, you've probably had a hell of a fight, the woman on the video said. I told Silas, a little pressure makes brothers remember their family. Leo's mind fractured. He looked at Gabe. Gabe's face was draining of color, the blood running out of it like water from a punctured vessel. She wasn't sick, Gabe whispered. She was a hostage, the man in white corrected. A very comfortable hostage, but a hostage nonetheless, in a very nice facility called Green Hills Manor, which coincidentally overlooks a very nice house that I've been very interested in acquiring. He removed his shoe from Leo's hand and gestured toward the edge of the roof. The two thugs moved in, stepping toward Leo and Gabe with the kind of steady purpose that suggested they had done this before. Now, the man said, you're going to sign the quit-claim deeds transferring your mother's house to my name, or you're going to take a slightly more permanent route down. Gabe's hand found Leo's hand, their fingers interlaced. Leo felt his brother's grip, strong and steady, anchoring him to the moment. Whatever happens, Leo said, and his voice was low and steady in a way he didn't know he could manage. We don't sign. The man in white sighed, disappointed. He nodded to the thugs. The thugs raised their guns. The muzzles pointed at Leo and Gabe's chests like twin accusers. The brothers stood side by side, holding each other's hands, and waited. Then the sky split open. A bolt of lightning struck the hospital's lightning rod nearby. The massive spark was so bright that for a split second there was nothing but white light. Leo's vision filled with it, his hearing filled with the deafening crack of thunder that seemed to shake the building itself. In that moment of chaos, Leo moved. It was pure instinct, pure desperation. He lunged for the gun in the first thug's hand. His fingers grazed the barrel. He missed. The thug shoved him hard, and Leo felt his feet leave the ground. He was falling. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. Leo was suspended in air, with nothing beneath him but the terrible distance to the street below. Then his hands shot up, and his fingers found the edge of the concrete gutter that ran along the roof's perimeter. His hands gripped it with everything he had. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of struggle. Gabe was fighting the second thug, his voice raised in anger or pain or both. Rain began to fall. Not a gentle rain, but a hard, drumming rain that soaked everything instantly. Leo's hands were slick on the concrete. He couldn't hold on forever. He could feel his fingers already starting to slip. He looked down. The street was very far away. The rain was making it impossible to see much detail. But he could see cars. Tiny from this distance. Insignificant. That's what he would be from down there. Insignificant. His right hand slipped. Now he was hanging from just his left hand, 10 stories above the city, rain beating down on his face and his body and his heart. Above, he could hear Gabe saying his name. Leo, Gabe called out. Hold on. But Leo wasn't sure he could. His grip was failing. The rain was relentless. The weight of his own body was a force that seemed to pull him inexorably downward. Then he heard Gabe say something else. Not today. Leo didn't see what happened next, but he felt it. Hands grabbing his wrist, hands pulling with a strength that came from somewhere beyond fear or pain. Leo was hauled upward, dragged over the concrete lip of the gutter, and collapsed onto the gravel of the roof. For a moment, he just lay there breathing, gasping. existing. The rain fell on his face, and he didn't wipe it away. When he pushed himself up, he saw Gabe standing over him. And beyond Gabe, the thug that had grabbed Gabe was on the ground, motionless. A syringe lay on the wet gravel next to him. "Where did you get that?" Leo asked. "Borrowed it from the hospital," Gabe said. "I figured we might need a medical advantage." Gabe held a handgun. He had taken it from the thug. His hands were shaking slightly as he held it, not from fear, but from the effort of all this. The first thug had backed away, hands raised. The man in the white linen suit was on his knees, his cane lying on the ground beside him, water running down his face and mixing with the blood from his nose. "It's over," Leo said. He didn't say it to the man in the suit. He said it to Gabe. He said it to the sky. He said it to the rain and the city and the terrible weight of the last 10 years. And maybe because he said it, it became true. The police came. An ambulance came. The rain continued to fall, washing the blood off the roof and into the gutters and down through the city's veins. Leo and Gabe were separated by paramedics, examined, questioned by detectives. But every moment they were apart, they kept their eyes on each other, as if to confirm that the other one was still real. Still there. Still alive. It was later, much later, after the police had taken their statements and checked their wounds and offered them rides to the station, that Leo and Gabe ended up back in the hospital, not injured enough to stay, but shaken enough that neither of them was ready to leave the other. They were standing in their mother's ward when they realized her bed was empty. The sheets had been stripped. The machines had been removed. She was gone. But on the nightstand was Silas's tablet. Leo picked it up and began scrolling through the files, looking for anything that might tell him where she was, where they would need to go. He found a folder labeled Vain Trust. Inside was a scanned document, a deed of release. It bore their father's signature and the seal of the county clerk. It said that the house, their mother's house, their childhood house, had been paid for in full 20 years ago, before their father died, before any of this started. The balance listed at the bottom of the document was 0.0. "He didn't leave us a debt," Gabe said quietly, reading over Leo's shoulder. "He left us a fortress. Silas was just the squatter." At the bottom of the document was a video file. Leo pressed play. Their father appeared on the screen. Younger, healthier, but with the same eyes that both brothers had inherited. Their father was sitting in the living room of the house. In the background, Leo could see the porch that needed repair, the window that let in drafts in the winter, the house as it had always been. "If you're watching this," their father said, his voice rich and warm, "you've probably had a hell of a fight. Good. Now go have a beer and fix the porch." Leo looked at Gabe. Gabe looked at Leo. On the tablet, Leo found another file, a map showing a location. Green Hills Manor, GPS coordinates, a notation that said, "Mother's location, GPS active on Silas's keys." "Let's go get her," Gabe said. They found Silas's keys in the suit jacket he'd been wearing. The key fob had the Thorne Investments logo on it. One of the keys started a black SUV in the hospital parking garage, an expensive vehicle, top of the line, the kind of car built for people who were used to winning. Leo drove. Gabe sat in the passenger seat, still bleeding slightly from where his glasses had cut him. The sun was setting behind them, casting the entire world in shades of gold and orange. The highway stretched out ahead of them in clean lines. The rain had passed. The sky was clearing. Gabe reached into the center console and found a packet of old-fashioned peppermint candies, red and white stripes, the kind their father used to eat. "Think she'll be mad about the house?" Gabe asked, offering Leo a candy. Leo took it and popped it into his mouth. The taste was clean and sharp and tasted like memory. "She'll be mad we took so long," Leo said. "But she'll be happy we're in the same car." The driveway of Green Hills Manor was long and lined with oak trees. It looked less like a medical facility and more like an estate. Everything about the place screamed money and discretion. The kind of place where you could hide a person, or hide from a person, depending on how you looked at it. At the end of the driveway was a large house with a porch that wrapped around 3 sides. And on that porch, in a wooden swing that moved back and forth with the evening breeze, was their mother. Leo stopped the car. The gravel crunched under the tires as he came to a stop. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Leo and Gabe stepped out of the car simultaneously. They stood side by side for just a moment, their shoulders almost touching, before they began to walk toward the house. As they walked across the lawn, Leo reached over and clapped Gabe on the back of the neck, a firm, brotherly gesture, the kind they hadn't shared in over a decade. Gabe reached back and squeezed Leo's shoulder. Their footsteps echoed across the empty space. The sun was lower now, painting long shadows across the ground. Their shadows merged as they walked, becoming a single silhouette approaching the porch. Their mother stood up from the swing. When they reached the porch steps, Leo paused. "Hey, Gabe," he said. "Yeah," Gabe answered. "Thanks for the pull." Gabe smiled. It was a small smile, hesitant, like he was remembering how to do it after a long time away. "Anytime," Gabe said. The brothers climbed the porch steps together. Behind them, the sky continued its transformation from gold to purple to deep blue. The day was ending. Something new was beginning. What that something was, neither of them knew yet. But for the first time in 10 years, they would face it together.